Alright guys, so today we're gonna be reacting to German's railway gun that shelled the Britain. Let's see, this is the series of German's inventions. We're gonna just jump in because some of this stuff is interesting, man. Interesting. Again, we're thinking about the time frame that a lot of these things were invented. And the side of the country, right? All that in combined, it makes you think a lot of stuff, right? And it's very interesting. I don't know why. We're just gonna jump in. Make sure you like to subscribe. Let's go.
A few days ago, I found out about a World War II German railway gun that was able to fire shells from northern France all the way to England. The next day, I persuaded some of my friends to join me on a day trip to northern France to go and see one of the only two guns of its type that still exist. After travelling mostly by car for almost 5 hours, I can say that it was very much worth it to see this gun in person. The railway gun was the Krump K5. Its full designation is Krump 28cm Kanone 5E. Krump is the manufacturer, 28cm is the barrel width on the inside of the gun. It's actually 283mm, but it's easier to round down. Kanone translates to cannon, and 5 refers to the series of the gun.
Does it work?
E means the gun was railway mounted, or in German, Eisenbahngeschütz. A total of 25 railway guns were built to the K5 specifications. The original purpose of these guns were to take on France's Maginot Line, the series of heavy fortifications between France and Germany. These fortifications were known to be a very formidable obstacle. Lots of other heavy weapons were also being developed around the period of the 1930s to take on France's Maginot Line, examples being the Karl siege mortars and the Schwer Gustav railway gun. All of these projects were in development as early as 1934, but weren't needed as the German army bypassed the heavy fortifications. There was a great love for railway guns by Germany, as they allowed heavy artillery to be able to be transported quickly over long distances with already existing infrastructure, the railway networks. The ease of transportation of the railway guns allowed them to be relatively mobile. They also could engage targets without worrying about enemy counter-artillery, as they could outrange even the heaviest Allied artillery at the time. Just to put it in perspective, the American Long Tom could fire shells up to a maximum range of 24 kilometers. The Russian 203mm B4 had a maximum range of 18 kilometers. Both of these guns' maximum ranges are under half of the K5.
Bro, look at that, man. Look at that thing. Look at that thing. Let me just watch that one more time.
Kilometers. Both of these guns' maximum ranges are under half of the K5s, and these are some of the heaviest artillery pieces that were made by the Allies. The K5 weighed 220 tons and could fire its 250 kg standard shell up to 65 kilometers away. Firing speed actually wasn't too bad for a railway gun. It was at a rate of 15 per hour, but you can also think of it as 1 round every 4 minutes at peak efficiency. Maximum range with standard shells was 65 kilometers, but later in the war, shells that could reach up to 150 kilometers away were developed. We'll talk more about the different shell types later. The K5 had a whopping rotation of 1 whole degree left or right. It was common for engineers to build a piece of curved railway track bending left or right so the gun could aim. This track was normally built before the gun arrived at the firing site, so it wasn't exactly a case of the artillery officer yelling at his engineers to build track as he wanted to aim the gun. To fix the issue of the traverse, it was common when there was time to build a turntable to allow the gun to rotate 360 degrees. It took 42 men to crew the K5, and that was just for the firing crew. The gun needed the support of engineers to maintain the gun, cooks to make meals, extra soldiers for security, admin personnel, and also other miscellaneous personnel, bringing the actual total crew number per gun up quite a bit. It was standard for railway guns to operate in pairs.
Look at how big
this is what made
Man, the ambition of humans, man, to create things that will destroy us. It's just
up a railway gun battery. Each battery had 3 trains for transport. 2 trains would be used to move the railway guns along with its special ammunition carriages. These carriages carried the shells and the propellant charges needed for the gun. It even had a refrigeration carriage just to keep the explosive powder at a low temperature. The 3rd train had approximately 24 railway cars, and the cars contained extra ammunition, extra food, kitchen, passenger cars, anti-aircraft equipment, electrical generator, flatbed for vehicles, and a whole bunch of other stuff. For transportation over long distance, a special framework was erected around the K5. Over this framework, a tarpaulin would be placed, helping to disguise the gun. It was hoped that it would disguise the railway gun to look more like a standard railway carriage, so if the train was spotted by Allied recon, not too much notice would be given for that particular train. The K5 guns saw action in Russia, northern France, Italy, and even in the defence of Germany in the later years of the war. 6 K5s were brought to northern France in preparation for Operation Sea Lion, the invasion of England by Germany. Even after the operation's cancellation, it was decided that the 6 guns would remain in northern France. 4 massive bunkers were built to accommodate the trains. Each bunker could fit 2 of the railway guns, with some room for the locomotive and ammunition wagons. When there was an Allied air presence, the railway guns would then back into the bunker to safely wait out the threat. After the raid was over, the train could then be brought out again and continue firing.
Look at that thing, bro.
These train bunkers...
My goodness. Look at how small they are. Look at the Germans, they look so small.
Bunkers and their firing positions can be seen on this map. Some of these bunkers are still around in northern France. You can see them on Google Maps. Here's 2 that I found. I saw one of these on the day trip. It's quite close to the Eurotunnel car exit, so it's actually not too hard to miss. The other one I found is in a quarry. Here's an actual picture of the K5 rolling out of that bunker. From northern France, the 6 K5s were used to battle for control of the channel by shooting at ships that were in range. They were used along with heavier coastal guns to deter a sea invasion and sometimes lay down a bombardment on southern England. The K5 displayed at the Atlantic War Museum isn't actually from northern France. In 1980, a 31 metre long railway gun was discovered behind a factory building in the State Artillery Workshops in southern France. It was left there to rust, but has recently been lovingly restored in the last few years. What is kind of odd is that they restored the K5 to have the same markings as Leopold, the only other surviving railway gun. My guess would be because the gun, when it was found back in 1980, had so much damage that the original markings were gone. Nobody's even sure of which railway battery this gun originally belonged to.
Does it work, man? You know what I'm saying? Does it work?
K5s also saw action in Sevastopol, Leningrad and Stalingrad, but the most documented account of the K5 in action was in Italy, where a pair of railway guns were used to great effect against the Allied sea landing. Originally the 2 guns were destined for Africa, but the campaign ended before they could be shipped over. That's why they have really weird camouflage patterns. The 2 K5s are called Leopold and Robert, also known by the nicknames given to them by the Allies as Anzio Annie and Anzio Express. The 2 K5s were deep inland in the hills of Italy, firing shells at the Allied beachhead. According to American records, the K5s caused 83% of the casualties received on the beachhead. What made these 2 particular railway guns rather annoying is that the Allies did not know their positions. The guns had the ability to retreat within a tunnel, so when there was a risk of attack, the K5s would just withdraw back into the tunnel. And when the danger was over, the K5s would leave the tunnel and continue bombardment of the beachhead.
Smart.
Typically they would pop out, fire around up to 8 rounds, and then fall back into the tunnel. A back and forth between the Allied forces in Italy and the 2 railway guns commenced for the next 3 months. One day the Allies finally got eyes on the 2 K5s as they were in a railway yard. Shortly after they were spotted, an attack by fighter bombers commenced on the rail yard. The pilots reported direct hits on the 2 railway guns.
Oh my god.
The Allies then found out that evening that they hadn't destroyed the K5 guns because they were getting shelled again that night. It turned out that the pilots had attacked decoys which were in the train yard.
They were afraid of it. They were afraid of it.
When the fighter bombers began to attack, the K5s were already in their tunnel. To mess with Allied recon, fake flashes to simulate the K5's muzzle flash were used around the Italian hills to confuse Allied recon into not knowing which flash was the origin of the shelling. There's a lovely quote from an American during the Anzio sea landings. One of its shells fell short and made a large hole in the ground. This shell crater was so big that we made good use of it because it was almost like a Roman amphitheatre. Sometimes an American band would perform at the base of the crater while we sat all around on the inside of the slopes.
Bro, that's how big it was, bro. That's how big the hole was. The hole was so big that they started using it as a space.
After 3 months of this back and forth, the guns were abandoned as the Allies were closing in to the location of the tunnel, and the ammunition for the guns was low. To stop the guns from falling into Allied hands, the guns were ordered to be destroyed. When the Allies did capture the tunnel and found the 2 railway guns, both of which were partially destroyed but still in relatively okay shape. Unfortunately, the Allies still bombed the hell out of the tunnel, but luckily the guns had already been removed. Both Leopold and Rowboat were shipped to the US. The parts of Rowboat were cannibalized and used to fix up Leopold. You can still find Leopold on display in the US. It's currently at Fort Lee in Virginia. There were 3 shells developed for the K5. There was a standard shell, a rocket-assisted shell, and an experimental arrow shell. The standard shell was the most accurate and had a range of 65 kilometers. It weighed just over 250 kilograms, and there was 30 kilograms of high explosive in the shell. The next type of shell was the rocket-assisted shell, weighing at just under 250 kilograms. A small rocket motor inside the shell ignited 19 seconds into flight, when the shell was roughly near horizontal in its shell trajectory. It had a maximum range of 86 kilometers, but this came at the cost of accuracy and the amount of high explosive within the shell. The HE value is now half of the previous type at only 14 kilograms. The last shell developed was the arrow shell. It weighed half the weight of the previous shells at only 136 kilograms. The arrow shell, in essence, was basically a discarding saber round. It had a maximum range of 151 kilometers and had 25 kilograms of HE. This shell had the range to be able to hit London from northern France. For the shell to leave the gun, propellant charges were needed. Typically 3 charges would be used, but for shorter ranges, less charges would be used. Ideally, the first shell of a barrage would be the ranging shell. This shell was designed to put out a lot of black smoke to make it easier for artillery observers to spot. To keep the loading time as short as possible, the crew moved the shells on little carts on a smaller gauge railway. One of these little carts could carry 1 shell and the propellant rounds needed for that shell. In essence, 1 cart could carry enough ammunition for 1 shot. These carts would be rolled along the smaller custom railway up to the back of the K5, where a crane would winch up the car and put it onto the loading deck. The deck had its own mini railway that allowed the cart to be rolled up all the way up to the breech. From there it was a simple matter just to push the shells in with a rod. Don't get me wrong, the shells weighed up to around 250 kilograms and the propellant...
How much was that? I don't even know how much is that, bro. In pounds. How much is a kilogram per pound? I don't even know. I don't even want to know.
Propellant charges were 50 kilograms and up. It was still hard work, just not as bad as if it wasn't automated. The train carriage's layout was designed to make loading of the shells almost like an assembly line. There was a small railway track that ran through the ammunition carriages on the train to make loading easier. I find it rather neat that later variants of the K5 actually had space to fit 2 carts on their loading deck. This allowed 1 cart to be loaded onto the deck while the other cart was being loaded into the gun. There were plans to mount the K5 onto 2 Tiger chassis to increase the gun's mobility and to decrease the reliance on a functioning rail network. This plan never got out of the design stage, and you can kind of see why. An already complicated machine, such as the railway gun, would be made infinitely more complicated if it had to be mounted on 2 Tigers. There's one question that a lot of people like to argue about, and that is, were railway guns useful? Or in this case, was the K5 useful? While it is argued that the K5 is one of the most successful railway guns of all time, most successful still does not mean that it was good, it just means it wasn't as bad as the rest. It took a lot of time and money to keep the K5s operational. There was a whole host of problems that plagued the K5s, such as not enough ammunition for the guns during the war. Throughout 1941 all the way to the end of the war, there were never enough rounds being produced for the K5. K5s on all fronts were set up and ready to fire, but they didn't have any shells to fire. Even in Italy, with the famous Anzio Annie shelling the Allied beachhead, all historic media likes to mention the siege went on for 3 months. Very few sources mention that the gun actually went silent for a period of 21 days because it was out of ammo. All the specialised equipment, like the actual production of the guns itself, the trains that pull them, the gun firing crew, the security detachment, other personnel, anti-aircraft guns, all to protect a big lump of steel that could easily be spotted from the air. Even with the best intentions to camouflage it, no amount of nets and bunkers could ever really hide the K5s forever. It's easy to say it was a big waste of time, but let's look at the positives a little bit. It did make for some great propaganda footage, and it's also nice to know as a soldier that in a war, your side has the bigger gun than the people you're fighting. Sure, it did have the bonus of being able to bombard targets without having to worry about counterfire, but if you didn't control the skies, the enemy will see a massive railway gun and find an easy target to destroy. The job of the railway gun could have just as easily been done with planes, which can drop thousands of kilograms of bombs for a much lower cost. The railway gun was already an obsolete concept at the beginning of World War II due to advances in aviation. Let's just be thankful that the Nazis greenlit the railway gun projects, because it may have caused the war to end slightly earlier than it should have due to misallocation of resources. Although I will admit though, I still think the gun looks really awesome.
That was very interesting. Oh, they have so much, man. They have so much, bro. I think we saw this one. We saw this one already. That's a nice one. But this one, ooh, look at that. This channel is amazing, bro. This channel is amazing. I'm talking about super amazing. They have some good stuff here, man. Some of you guys said in the comment section that some of these inventions were not as good as the American, which I agree. But I'm coming from a position where the time frame of inventions, right, amazed me how much they put into, okay, we need to just figure out how can we just be better against all these obstacles, right? And let's throw stuff into the wall, and hopefully one of those stuff is gonna stick. And they were not afraid to do it, not afraid at all. So I'm very amazed of those things. The Soviets, I would like to watch that one too, man. There's a lot, man. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And I will see you in the next one. I'm out. Peace.